Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
And today, Dan and I are gonna... Hi Dan, are you with us?
I am. I was momentarily distracted. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Dan apparently has better things to do, so we'll talk about Ant-Man, briefly. We'll do a little review, Dan, of Ant-Man. Today, Dan and I are going to tell you how we felt about Ant-Man. Obviously, always with the how we're feeling it reviews, we try to go non-spoiler or as little spoiler as possible. We may even say a little bit less this time because we're going to do a spoiler cast as we always do with the big superhero releases. So next week, sometime, there will be a spoiler cast with me and Dan and some other folks, some other magnanimous folks we know. So very briefly, Dan and I are going to give you our immediate walking out the theater thoughts. We just saw it each a couple hours ago, and let's go ahead and jump right into it. So of course, Ant-Man, the 352nd thing Marvel's made now in their Marvel Cinematic Universe, and but it feels like that now, right? I mean, it's really cool. Like, we've got such an expansive universe now that we just feels like we've had a million things already.
Yeah, one of the things that I really liked about this movie is how it kind of fit itself into the past of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We'll talk a little bit about that, because that's one of the things I like the most about it.
Yes, we will. So Ant-Man is our first kind of legacy hero movie for Marvel, and it's neat that they figured out a way to do that, where you've got Hank Pym, and he needs somebody else to be Ant-Man in order to help him kind of topple the corporate CEO that has taken over his company and is trying to bring back his formula and the Pym particle. And it's more of a heist movie than it is anything. We talk a lot about how a lot of Marvel's movies, they are a studio as much as they are a universe, and so they keep trying to make different movies that fit in different genres while still squarely fitting in the same universe. And so now we have a heist kind of espionage movie. We'll talk about how well they handle that. So Dan, I'm going to let you go first. How did you feel about Ant-Man? Go ahead and flip your board. This is, by the way, Dan's first appearance on how we felt about it, so he's going to get to do the feeling it formula with us. And
this will be fun.
Dan, flip your board and then give me a best thing and a worst thing.
Well, I want to say right off the bat, I did enjoy Ant-Man, but the way that it made me feel was I was watching a movie about the events in between the interesting things a cast of characters I like do.
Okay, that's fair.
So I really liked the best thing about this movie for me was definitely the cast. I felt like they really sold what they were given, and I felt like if you had anyone other than Michael Douglas playing Hank Pym, he wouldn't be nearly as interesting as a character as he is in this movie.
Yeah, I can see that.
I feel like he plays Hank Pym with this undertone of anger and sadness that really rounds out the character and makes him interesting to me and makes me want to see more of him. I think the way that Hank Pym's temper is handled really interestingly in the movie. He's obviously a little bit different from the character in the comics. I don't think he's unlikable and as much of a mustache-twirling supervillain as some people haven't actually read the Avengers stories portray him as being, because they're just oh, he hit his wife once, so I hate everything about him. I mean, he
sounds like Al Simmons.
I don't condone hitting women, obviously, but he's a little bit more complicated than that, and I think Douglas clearly understands that and played the character in that way. I was laughing throughout most of the movie. Most of the humor worked for me. I could see it not working for some people, but it played to my humor taste. I enjoyed it. I just felt like there was a lot of telling and not showing in this movie. I felt like Scott Lang's motivations and the reasons why he doesn't have a relationship with his daughter in the first place aren't all that well defined. And sort of the same thing with Hank Pym. I think their struggle being paralleled is really interesting, where there are people that initially didn't think that their personal relationships were worth their principles, and that's kind of what they're struggling with throughout the movie. But I felt like I didn't know enough as to why Hank Pym felt the need to create this particle in the first place, what inspired him to make it, why he didn't want it to be weaponized, and why Scott Lang was this anti-establishment type that was a whistleblower that was against the system.
Yeah,
there was not
fair.
Really a lot of discussion about who these people are and what brought them to the place they are in the movie. I know where they are with their relationships with their daughters, and that's kind of like what the crux of the story is about. But
Yeah.
I didn't really know all that much about them as characters. Like when Michael Douglas says to Corey Stoll's character, I don't even remember the guy's name, the villain, he was kind of forgettable for me, but he's just kind of like, I saw too much of myself in you. Well, Corey Stoll, the only thing we know about him is he's a mustache twirling supervillain because he's had his brain altered. We haven't seen what Hank Pym sees in him that's reflected in himself, because I don't feel like we know either of those people well enough to get any gauge as to what that means. So, I mean, I think the film could have spent a little bit more time developing the motivations of some of the characters, but other than that, I really enjoyed the movie. That's like my one big complaint about it. I loved all the action, obviously. The action was really innovative and cool looking. I hadn't seen some of the stuff that they'd done in this movie in other action movies before. I mean, maybe I'm just not privy to the stuff that's done in shrinking effects like this, but I thought all the special effects were really cool. I thought all the characters were likable, but I just would have liked to have spent a little bit more time defining these people and fleshing them out a little bit. That's just how I feel about it, I suppose.
So are you flipping green?
I am feeling it, yes. I would recommend seeing it. I think it's a movie worth seeing in the theater, and I think it's enjoyable. I'm not really going to discuss the Edgar Wright, like what vision, like what this director's vision was. I went and saw the movie because I don't know, like, I don't know exactly what happened between Edgar Wright and Marvel, and I'm not going to pretend to, so I'm just going to look at the movie as it is, and that's how I felt about it. So,
regarding that real quick, because I wasn't going to speak to that either, but I was surprised when I got to the credits by how much his name was still on it. He's still on as a producer. He's got, if memory serves, first credit as writer, first or second out of a list of 4 people. I think including the guy playing Ant-Man. I think his name is in there for story, like.
Paul Rudd.
Yeah, like I guess Paul Rudd like helped them define the story. I was kind of surprised by that. Unless I saw that wrong, but like I said, I just got out of the theater. But I remember thinking, oh, that's weird. So I found myself kind of wondering just how different this ended up being from what Wright would have done had he actually been directing, because like his name wasn't off the screenplay, and so it looks like they might have rewritten his screenplay some, but it wasn't the sort of situation where he said get my name off of it. So the movie might not have been all that much different, but there's no way to know. Having seen it and thought that it was that it was pretty cool, and feeling like they put together a story that is pretty tightly knit. It's a lot better than I initially thought it might when we lost that director who spent like 10 years dreaming this thing up, because I guess for a long time he really wanted to make that, and so you hear that kind of thing and you get kind of worried, it's like oh no, the guy whose master plan it was is gone now. Dan, this movie made me feel like a little kid watching his very first superhero movie.
Oh, cool.
This is such a feel-good movie, dude, and that's a lot of what I loved about it. This to me was, even over Age of Ultron, kind of, because Age of Ultron has a lot of heavy themes and stuff, is a really great kind of popcorn-eating sort of summer blockbuster. It's exactly the kind of thing that I go to the movie to escape to, but then it's not without thought-provoking ideas also. Although I would say that a lot of the and I think maybe the thing I like most about it, Dan, the most thought-provoking stuff in it, besides just some pretty decent heartfelt character stuff in places, was stuff that we're just continuing to build in this world, movie to movie, with the possible exception of Guardians, because that was so far off in its own field. We've got a lot of ideas that have been fueling the Iron Man movies and the Avengers movies in the background of this, where we start with them, and with the big corporate CEO stuff, I found myself going, okay, so we're going to do another movie that is all about protection versus freedom, and then that ended up just kind of being in the background, and after a while it just turns into a really like fun comic book womp, and like you could say that about a lot of the Marvel movies, but this in my mind is one of, if not the most, like Marvel formula comic book movies they've made. It felt so old school Marvel method to me, visually and story-wise. Going all the way to the shrinking effect is what it looks like on panel. That's so cool. That you can see like the residual, like pictures of the guy as he's getting smaller.
Yeah, that is really cool.
I was like, that's neat that they did that. My favorite thing about this is the way it weaves all around stuff we've seen already in the Marvel universe, and I feel like it's kind of the opposite of Guardians in that way, where these are both movies, and I have a hard time not comparing them because these are both, like, to the general public, really obscure properties that you wouldn't think to make a movie of. And then what made Guardians work so well was that besides the Thanos stuff, it didn't really matter if you'd seen these movies before. It kind of was its own thing and its own aesthetic, and it's this quirky sci-fi thing, and it runs off with itself. And this has this really like small scale. And I guess, pun intended, I think it does that on purpose. It's kind of fun, we're telling a story about a guy that turns into an ant, and it feels like the in some ways, like, the least big deal story they've told so far. And
I appreciate that the scope is so small, because, at some point, Marvel has to realize that they can't try to blow up the world every time they make a movie. It's going to get repetitive, right? So you got to have, like, these superheroes that can serve other purposes and you can tell other stories with. And I think this is the kind of character where he's not going to face an existential threat to all of humanity. It's just not going to work with this guy.
Yeah, the stakes are plenty big enough because again, it's roped into the larger world we've been telling stories in. So it doesn't feel like it doesn't matter, although it does feel like a thing that you could pretty easily skip if you were kind of just watching the big ones. But that's what I liked about it, was that this studio has been making successful movies for so long that now, and we had this with Guardians too, now they can just put out movies that are about these kind of smaller time things, and sort of like we do a lot in comics, where it's like, okay, this is an off the beaten path thing that's maybe not going to be for everyone, but here it is. And yet I think this is accessible enough. There's so much here for folks like us, Dan, that have been following all of the Marvel movies all the way through. It ties even to TV stuff. I mean, it's really cool just how interwoven it is to everything, and how it fleshes out the history. And I think the big thing that gave me a smile on my face walking out of the theater was that I felt like was that I couldn't imagine now the Marvel Universe without it. Where I was like, oh yeah, where was Hank Pym this whole time? You know what I mean? Like, he feels, the movie makes me feel like he was integral to the history of this world. And finding a way to make Hank Pym really sympathetic is, like, out the gate is not the easiest thing to do. So starting with him as an older person and having kind of already gone through a character arc before we meet him is great. And I think I like Hank Pym, I think, a great deal more in the movie than I do Paul Rudd's character, although as a protagonist, he's serviceable, but I kept finding myself a lot more intrigued by the character stuff going on with Hank Pym and his daughter, and I thought that it was neat that he got as much to do as he did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I was intrigued by all of the stuff, like him being an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. during the Cold War, and his disillusionment with S.H.I.E.L.D. I wish we could have, like, seen that. That was my sort of thing, because that was the thing that intrigued me most in the entire movie.
Yeah, and see, it didn't bother me that we didn't, because I feel like, and I don't want to get too much into the nitty-gritty for folks that haven't seen that haven't seen it yet, but I was fine with not getting it because I feel like they left it out because they might do it later in something else. There is every reason to think that they might go back and do some of that stuff in Carter or some other places. So. And maybe they won't, but I mean, like, we could have. The problem is that we do have kind of a dual protagonist situation here, and if you do too much of that stuff and you do too much flashback stuff, then you kind of lose. You kind of lose Scott Lang a little bit, and that could have been potentially really problematic. Where at the point that you do that and it stops being so much of a legacy movie, you really ought to. I get your point that maybe they should have told us more about that stuff, but if you're not careful, then you lose the legacy bit, and you go, why don't we just make a movie starring Michael Douglas the whole time?
That's what I mean. Like, I thought there's more of an interesting story there than there was actually in this movie. I thought that, like, the plot of them sort of, like, reconnecting with their daughters was kind of interesting, but, like, the thing that caused them to lose connection with those people seemed more interesting to me in the first place. Like,
That's
Scott
fair.
Lang's disillusionment with the corporate structure that he was working in. What led him to be such a principled person that he would, like, sacrifice his freedom to go to jail?
I'm with you, and
I'd like to see that story told. I think that sounds interesting.
Well, the movie definitely didn't do a good job of keeping me with that stuff, because I kept kind of having to remind myself that he was doing the wrong thing for the right reasons in the first place. I kept thinking, oh, this is a guy that just steals stuff because that's the easy way to go. And then the fact that he keeps going back to just stealing stuff instead of trying to find a way to get back to his daughter through more legit channels gave me every reason to keep forgetting that, oh yeah, he had what he thought was more of a an altruistic reason for being a thief in the first place. So yeah, no, to your point, you're absolutely right. Worst thing for me is it is a pretty. It's somewhat formulaic. I mean, I feel like the third act is pretty callable, but I was enjoying myself the whole time. But I get kind of hung up on it, Dan, because I understand the complaints that a lot of folks have been giving Marvel for having kind of the same formula all the time, that you get to the third act and it's always this big action set piece. I feel like they did a pretty good job this time around of making it believable that we got to the big set piece when we got there, and the heist was more of the movie than I thought it would be. As an origin picture, I think it's pretty cool that it takes place in such a small amount of time, and it doesn't feel like one of those movies where we should have just had him be Ant-Man already and then get going. It felt like there really was a story, to tell there. But where I get hung up is, okay, I'm praising it for being such a comic book movie, but then I'm dogging on it for being such a comic book movie. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And so I always get kind of unsure about that. There really aren't any big story surprises, and I don't mean that plot twists make everything, but I'm just saying that I think kind of more or less turn out the way I thought they would. And play out toward the end the way that I figured they would. But to your point earlier about the action, real quick, that was the other thing that really impressed me, was just all the really creative ways we used the landscape of being small and the perspective you have that way. I thought a lot of the choices for set pieces were really imaginative and like you said, stuff I hadn't seen before, and so that and things that were just really funny. The way we used the shrinking and growing science was awesome, because of course Hank Pym has always been both Ant-Man and Giant Man, and I didn't really expect any Giant Man stuff, and we got a little bit of that, and we got a little bit of stuff also can get big, and that was really fun. But anyway, obviously, I'm feeling it. I kind of loved it while I was watching it, Dan. I think your criticisms are fair. I also think that, like we've had with so many of these things, it's very likely that a few years from now you won't have those anymore. Because there's been so much of that with these movies where we keep building on things and we want more now, but then we get more of it later, and so it's just impossible to draw the line between singular pieces and an ongoing overarching story that goes through all these things.
It'll be interesting to see, what we end up getting. I mean, I doubt that we'd ever get Michael Douglas to wear the makeup he did, which looked really good at the beginning of the movie, by the way.
Yeah,
everyone's makeup that made them look a different age was really great. Haley Atwell looked authentically old, and Michael Douglas looked authentically young. I doubt that we'd get, a miniseries or even a movie, a prequel of Hank Pym, with the Wasp and stuff, and I don't think we'd get a prequel of Paul Rudd just being a dude in a corporate place.
No,
like I don't think those stories.
What you're saying about Paul Rudd is fair.
Remiss about them not being focused on more.
No, I get that.
That was where the interesting story.
But you could but as far you're never going to get that with Paul Rudd. But you could recast Michael Douglas and do a younger version, because I don't know when all that happens exactly, and they could play Carter out long enough that you could get that stuff.
That would be awesome.
You see what I'm saying? So I'm just saying, don't count that out. I think that's possible. You just recast him and go with a younger actor. But as far as as far as Paul, totally fair criticism.
I mean, I like these characters a lot, so I'm excited to see more of it, and I hope they get a sequel, because they do set up the Wasp at the end.
See, I don't, and that's one of the things I really liked about it, was that I feel like this is, and I meant to say this earlier, it's really cool that we have a movie that is and some people will resist this. First of all, I don't think this movie's going to do anything like Guardians numbers, and I think that's okay. Like Guardians was played up as taking a thing that was really obscure and making it A-list. This strikes me as a B-list superhero movie, and that's what I really like about it. And so I would be very surprised if they made a sequel. Dan, I feel like what this was a setup for a character that they want to use a lot in Avengers, but they don't want to have to do all of his backstory stuff there, so they gave us a whole movie about it. That's the way it strikes me. And with the potential eventual Wasp stuff, I think it's exactly the same thing for that character. Now, that's not to say that I wouldn't love a sequel to this. I'll just be very surprised if we get one.
Yeah, well, see, I mean, it's tracking right now to make just about as much money as any of the other movies have.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, so,
well, we're only at Thursday, so I didn't even think to look.
Yeah, I mean, they were saying that like last week and stuff like that. So we'll see how it does. I mean, I don't think we necessarily need a sequel. I'm with you, and I think that's probably what they're going to end up doing. And there is some foreshadowing here as to what side the Ant-Man crew will side on when it comes to Civil War, which is cool, because we know that Scott Lang is going to be in that movie. There's a big thing with the Pyms and the Starks in this, which is potentially interesting.
See, and that's why I said that I felt like I had a little bit of a better sense of Pym's character than the way you were discussing. I get your criticism, but also I couldn't help but constantly compare him to Stark and Rogers, and like he's somewhere in the middle, and I found that really interesting.
My issue is I just don't know where he is in the middle. I just don't think he has any. There's no definition as to where his position is on all that much of anything.
Oh, really? I didn't have that. I mean, I won't get into it here, but
what his problem with weaponizing his technology is necessarily.
Okay. Well, we can discuss that more on the spoiler cast.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I didn't think of that. I didn't have that, but that's interesting. I figured, and maybe I just gave it too much credit and thought, okay, something happened, move on. You know what I mean? Where like I just figured maybe something sort of like what's happened recently with Tony Stark happened to Pym, and he just matured faster.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, my thing is, I have no idea, and that's what I would like to have known about him, because he was my favorite character in the movie. And
there's also a story point that just came to my mind that probably helps to explain it some, but I don't want to give that away here. So, sure. Dan and I are going to go argue with each other, and anyway, if you saw the movie, let us know what you thought of it. Obviously, Dan and I both enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed it more than you did.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to come off as negative. I just there was just some issues I had with it, but no film's perfect, and I think it's definitely a feel-good movie, like you said. I really enjoyed it while I was watching it, and I think this is one of the more effective Marvel movies in terms of humor. I think a lot of people that complain about all the Marvel movies try to do humor too much. Most of the movie was genuinely funny, and I can't say that about every joke that's ever happened in the Marvel universe in the movies before, necessarily, but I thought this one worked pretty well. It's definitely a lot different than the other stuff. It's got more of a comedic tone to it, which I enjoyed, obviously, because you got Paul Rudd in the lead role. You kind of expect that, but it was cool. I liked that.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of those movies have quite a bit of a joking component, but I feel like it's somewhat of a different brand of humor, and I think that's the thing that will get families and kids through it that aren't picking up on all of the cool interwoven Marvel stuff that is what will be the most fun for people that or have been keeping up with this stuff and watch this movie and don't give a crap about Ant-Man. Because you will have those people where they'll just be like, I don't know, this Paul Rudd guy, or the Scott Lang guy, he's just like, he's really simplistic, he doesn't have the character dimension that Tony Stark and Steve Rogers and some of these guys do. He is just a simple guy, but that's kind of what I liked about it.
Yeah, fair enough. But, like, I don't know. I just thought he was a little bit more complex where he was, like, at the beginning with, like, why he defied the company and stuff.
That's true, and like I said, I lost all of that and then didn't care until you brought it up again. So, I mean, it's a perfectly fair point. Well, anyway, everybody, thanks a lot for watching. We sure appreciate it, and we'll see you again next week for the Spoiler Cast. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
See you later. Dan was like, yeah, I'm gonna be quick on the uptake this time. In the beginning, I was like, and I'm Dan, and then at the end, I'm Dan.